Hi, welcome back. New year.
Happy New Year. 2025. Best year yet, ever.
Yes, so excited for this year.
I mean, it's going really well for you with the wildfires and everything. So,
Yeah, I mean,
not to be laughed at, honestly.
no, it's apocalyptic out there. I wrote something on LinkedIn, like there's literally a tree, like close to my window, didn't go in my window, and I'm like safe and the least, concerned. But definitely people have friends have evacuated, and you can see, everywhere. I've told Hudson not to ride his, an e-bike anywhere near the Palisades. It's that shit's real.
Yeah, it's very serious. So
Yeah.
hopefully everyone out there is okay. And Mudwater doing some great things, letting people into their space. So love that. Any brands out there who want to follow Mudwater's example and let people evacuating into their space and give them some space, we applaud that.
Yeah, let's see more of that. Fred Rogers famously said, in times of crisis, look for the helpers. And it's definitely something that, like, they're always there. And they're a great example.
All right. So this is a podcast about trends, marketing, things I'm sharing on Slack, and growing into a lot more. Obviously, much bigger conversation. And it was a super fun addition to kick off the new year, inviting like some of the people that I read religiously or talk to religiously, depending, about all the things that they're kind of seeing and thinking about for the 2025 and beyond that. We're going to focus on 2025, just that one section of this really ginormous email that I sent, and unpack it a bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's so much great intel. These people are all amazing. And I love the range, the variety, how smart, how thoughtful, just really excited to dig into all the things. But obviously we got to make it manageable. And I think that the thing that I want to know most is what people can't stop talking about.
Yeah. All right. So let's dive in. I'll try to give a little overview. I do a bigger job, and I'll link to this kind of in the show notes and everything, obviously, so you can read about all these people and get links to everything that they do. But we're kicking off with this second section. So we're just going to go in the order that I shared it in because, I'm not that fancy. So the first one's Marie. Marie is this incredible French woman that I have become genuine friends with through Substack. So that's the amazing thing about writing these letters. I've been following her letters, one of the first Substacks that I subscribed to. I have no idea how I found her, started following her. This woman is whip smart, smart as anyone that you'll meet. But she also is really philosophical. She really thinking about things in a very holistic, big picture way. And when you read her letters, they really feel literally the last line of every one of her letters, I can tell you could be on a billboard. It's so thoughtful. So if you're not reading her, please do. Yeah. So her one was outsmarting as a service. And I thought this was super interesting because obviously the conversation around AI is so big, right? But what will that look like? And I think it's going way faster, guys, than anyone thought it would. And I think it's only going to get faster. NVIDIA came out today and said they're going to make hardware that's going to be a computer that will let you go even faster on these things. It's going to take off next year. But what Maria is talking about is humans are amazing in that they always find it's we're weeds. We find the water in the crack and we plant seeds, and we do that. No, think about when it was the COVID, how many great careers did you see come out of people losing their jobs? Some of the people that I follow now, they did that because they were put into a circumstance where they had to find and create something for themselves, and they made something even better and bigger than they ever would have. So
I think it's almost always the case. That's where the growth and amazing things happen.
And I think that that's kind of what Marie is getting to. She talks specifically about Daisy, which is this initiative that I've shared before, where this telecom company who is kind of using AI to combat scammers. So in the UK, there's a lot of scammers who are trying to call, and they call specifically mostly elder people, and then they convince them to give them money, essentially. So this telecom company created Daisy, which is essentially a grandmother, and that talks to them on the phone and keeps them busy so that they're not talking to other people, but actually they're talking to an AI. the whole time. And so they're basically just scamming
Genius.
no one, which is like, that's a great example too. But like, I think there's also like, I've mentioned this before, but there's a new AI company, and I'll link to it in the show notes because I'm the world's worst person at remembering names. But there's another AI that I've mentioned that was for agencies, where they were like looking at it as like, hey, actually, we like the hallucinations and we need more variety, because one of the things about AI is that it's really good at doing things very predictively, right? Like, and when you're doing something creative, you actually, that's not how creatives want anything to go.
Right.
And that's not where great ideas come from. But it also doesn't come from like hallucinating facts and like making things like not real. That's also not helpful. So they're creating an AI that will like allow you to give some inputs, but then it's also going to give you variety. And I think that's kind of like what I keep thinking about, is like, I think we're going to start building more things to like play with AI in a way that like right now, like we're just in this like automating phase. And I think that will change quickly.
Totally. Yeah. I think that's fascinating. And I think that's well said. I think what you and I have talked about and what you've helped me to see is I think we are in this automating phase. Oh, I can use AI as a tool for this, or I could use it for this, or I could use it for this. And starting to use it for thinking and using it like instead of Google search, the idea of like this clumsy grandmother is amazing and genius, and really thinking about it like the next level and the next version of things to really be that thinking. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll get to what Danielle. Maybe we'll skip down to Danielle because it really is connected, and we'll come back up to Jenny. But Danielle, so Danielle is my best friend from ever, and what's been really fascinating is Danielle like has worked in venture. She was a lawyer. Like, this woman has had like 1,000 lives, and she always excels at every life she has, but it's always vastly different. And this new life that she's taken on in the last year has become like an absolute obsessive about AI. Like 27 things a day I get from her of like, this is what it can do now. Like, just the running commentary on CES today has been so insightful. I will share some things in the Sunday letter, but she just has so much appetite for it. But what's interesting about her, which I think is interesting for us, is that she's not an AI insider. She's not coming at this as like, I'm a tech nerd and I know how all of this is working. She's using it and she's figuring out how to use it, you know, like, and how things are created. She's really interested, obviously, in AI agents, which I've written about before, which will be like where things start to get woven together. So you'll essentially have like an employee working for you, like in this agent. Like the agent you'll be giving it inputs, and then it's going to be able to do several automated things on its own, right? Like it's going to be able to produce a task. So you might have an AI agent by next year for your marketing that's like, you have an AI agent for like running a podcast. You're going to have an AI agent for like your Instagram ads, and then a different one for this kind of ads, and like all of that stuff, like all of this paid performance stuff is going to get like so ubiquitous. I think it'll become like a problem in and of itself, right? Like when things become too easy. Right. And everyone can do them. But then like it will be interesting to see how people kind of handle this. But I think what she's talking about is like there's going to be a new level of productivity, a new level of efficiency, and a new level of ease. And the interesting thing that I was reading about today that I'll again share in the notes is what Klarna is doing. It's Klarna. The, you know, like the pay as you go kind of thing. That's not what that's called, but again, I'll write it for you. You know,
I know. I got it though.
You know what? You followed what I was talking about. They're interesting. So they stopped hiring people last year, and they've been implementing AI in the place of these jobs. But instead of saying, hey, we're going to take all that money that we're saving and we're going to like give it to the boss, right? Or give it to the boss man. They actually said, hey, whatever we collectively save will collectively raise everybody's salaries.
So rad.
So what's been interesting about this is that then you have a whole culture of people who are like, where can I use AI? Because they are incentivized And sure, eventually maybe like Plana's like, scheme where like, everyone's not going to like be making $1 million, and eventually this might change, right? But what's going to come out of that is that those people are going to be the best people in their industry who understand AI because they've been using AI for the longest. They're going to be more deeply embedded. They're going to be more savvy and know how to use it. So if you're looking to hire AI, like look at Klarna's staff in about 6 months because you're going to have a few experts there. But I think that's just like, to me, like where things are going is like, and again, this is kind of outsmarting as a service. Like it ties to me. It's like a business like, hey, you can save money, but you could also then like just raise the bar for everybody and like have it not be a battle of people sitting there being like, oh no, like are you going to lose your job? You're going to really change the culture.
Right. But that's what's so fascinating is it's a yes and, right? They're creating innovation, but an incentivized innovation, but they're also creating, great kind of a great culture within that because they're financially for everybody versus just like, the one dude making more money, which never feels good.
Right. Yeah. So I love that. I think that this is going to be like an interesting 2025 as brands figure out how to incorporate and how to train people and how to upskill people. I think they're an interesting brand to look at.
Yeah. And I've learned so much following Danielle. So yes.
I mean, the woman is obsessed. Jenny. So Jenny is your best friend. Yes. And also happens to be, as I have mentioned, my inside wellness guru. So anything that like I have been following for a long time, like with microbiome, like I literally was like telling Jenny, like when she told me about it, I was like, no one's going to even know how to say this, Jenny. Like, how is this going to become a thing? And then here we are, microbiome, everything. So this woman knows everything that is everything. She knows. So you want to take this one just to like give it an intro, or you want me to tell you how?
Yeah, I mean, I want to know how you feel about it. I mean, peptides, like, again, I have the, inside knowledge of Jenny. So the information that she's sharing, like I've been on it, like I'm personally on peptides. Like, I think all of this stuff is fascinating to see kind of what's next, but feel like I have a little bit of an inside scoop into kind of all these things. So would love
share the insights. Share the insights.
Well, it's just that this is a thing, like, that it's, I don't, and all of my things, like I don't know exactly how it actually works, but I know that it does work, and it is about kind of reformulating. And the peptides that I'm on are ones that are naturally, like they're not actually creating the growth, but they're incentivizing your body to create the regrowth. Like it's that kind of thing. So I think it's fascinating in what they actually can do and what's already out there.
Yeah. I mean, I think like from like I, again, don't know more than what Jenny tells me, but like I know that if she tells me it will probably be true in 2025, and if it's not, because of how products develop, like it'll be 2026. So I think if you're looking in kind of this space, like this is where these ingredients are going. To me, like what's interesting is I think that right now, like I've talked about the shift in Botox, right? And how it's shifting from like a medical procedure into kind of a wellness and beauty procedure, right? And I do think that's interesting. But I think that over time, like with everything, there's like going to be a backlash, right? Like the pendulum will swing away from like, yeah, we're okay with Botox to like, no, we're really not okay with Botox. So I think that everyone will just get better. I mean, like I was thinking about Demi Moore and like, goodness gracious, everyone wants to know about Lindsay Lohan is doing. I want to know what Demi Moore is doing because that is amazing.
She looks amazing.
Yeah, and if it's Botox, more power to her. But I think like what I think is interesting is like as a like positioning for all of these things, I think there's like a lot of products that are kind of going off into kind of more of this like biohacking kind of space. And this to me feels like it's bordering on that, where people are looking for ways to like get their body to do things for them instead of like doing something to stop your body from doing something, if you know what I mean.
Right.
It's like
it's
having your body create the Botox.
Right. It's so the regrowth. Yes. Right.
Versus like not. Like I think about like, like when I did IVF and I had human growth hormone and like all of those things, like this ability to like kind of heal ourselves like exists within us. Right. Like we just 100%. Haven't figured out yet how to like make that happen on a large scale. And I think this is one way, small way that this is happening. It's my understanding of it.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that's exactly right. Right. It's what she says, peptides are the building blocks of keratin. Like, and it's really about collagen formation, repairing, capillary growth. Like it's really incentivizing your body to repair itself. It's doing exactly what you said. And I think like peptides, hearing it, and the one that I use is actually an injectable, like the way that it's used, I think is very similar to Botox. It was in kind of a very medical way. And now it's taking those ingredients and including those in, different beauty treatments, which understanding what they actually do and how it actually impacts, and the things that I've personally tried, which are obviously all of the things on Jenny's list, work amazing.
Yeah. So I just think that will be an interesting thing. Like, I think we might start to see treatment centers where you would like go in and get your peptide shot. Cause like not everyone's like comfortable with just giving themselves things like that. Although GLP-1s have like certainly made injectables like more palatable, I think. Mm-hmm. Like, I think previously, like it was like, I'm only injecting myself if I'm dying or I need to make a baby. And now you're like, yeah. I don't know. Like, shoot me up. It's fine. So anyway, I think this is an interesting, like, I think if it was more like a biohacking thing and it's coming out of that, but it's also tied to that movement. And I think that will be a thing.
I think that's right.
Which actually brings us to Achuko, and who, again, my level of obsession with her is like probably slightly unhealthy. We've met virtually. She's amazing. She's young. She's thoughtful. She's got like, I mean, this girl is woman, but she is young and stunning and just like, she's like so far ahead of where she should be in life. It's insane. But anywho, enough of that love fest. I feel like what she wrote about was like something that I was like, this is so true. And like, I think it's really coming for us in a big way because of everything that's happened with Trump's election. And I think it, like not even like, it's not a negative thing. It's just a reality thing. Like to just take away like any negativity that anyone has for this. I think it's just like, this is what's coming. And it's actually been building and growing for like a long time. And I think if you spend any time in LA, like this has been happening for a while.
Right.
Yeah. But what she writes about is that food has always been political, which it has. Obviously food deserts, like this is like so many ways that you could unpack that statement. But what is happening now, and especially with MAHA, which, make America healthy again, which I found out recently was also a tagline that Sweet Green used back in 2016. So like hysterical. I will also share that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Because you can enjoy that.
Right.
But it's, I think like as kind of like, seed oils and like, are you a seed oil person or you're not a seed oil person? Like where all of these things are going. And I actually think like what's been interesting, and I've talked about this, is that like a lot of like the Erewhon people, like who you think of as maybe like previously might have thought of these people as like ultra lefty, like kind of like granola people, are not actually that kind of only that type of person, but they are also like deep Republicans and believe that they shouldn't be as regulated and like that the government shouldn't have as much to do with like vaccinating your kids and like, like that, those two people are living in a very similar, like squished up, like narrow place, and it's called Erewhon, and they live there.
Right, and there's beliefs within that whole world, not just the two. There's like a whole world of people that believe this, spectrum, but not that, and this, yeah.
And that's what I mean, is that those two realities can live within, like, some of those beliefs can live in somebody who is extremely left and democratic, and some of these beliefs can, and like the same person can also not, like, love vaccines. So like I think it's just an interesting time, and I think what she's talking about and like with all of that is that brands are going to be forced to take a political stance because they will become inherently political. And that's an interesting landscape for brands to have to deal with, right? Because brands do not like politics typically. They're not like trying to wade into the politics. But I think what is the reality is that the politics is coming to their front door. So get ready. It's going to be an interesting year.
Yeah.
Especially like, I think it could be a very fascinating time for brands to like how to navigate that.
Yeah, I think it definitely will. And I think it's interesting, like thinking about the aisles of Erewhon, which I do, and thinking about brands like we talked about Mudwater and what they did. Like it's a a lot of these brands are coming out with their values front and center, and they're not necessarily political, but there are definitely, very strong beliefs within them that people either gravitate towards or, aren't necessarily paying attention to or interested in. And I think a brand like Mudwater is a great example of that. Like they're for sure leading with like they support, maps and kind of other psychedelic research and things like that. And that's very much what they lean into as a brand. And you're either connected and it's a, let's say, a yes kind of affirmation of the product that you're buying or, something else. So I think it's interesting. And it's kind of been a long time coming, and to see it really come into a more powerful way, I think is for sure happening.
I think you bring up a good point, because I feel like I don't know, I want to say like kind of like since COVID, it's been much more like brands are like not as interested in having such clear beliefs, and it's not so much about your values, and it's like, are you like, is your brand functioning and are you selling? And like, it's just been like a more, I don't know, like commerce driven moment for brands, like performance marketing and like, it's just like all of that stuff. And now we're moving into this place where like brands are literally going to be forced to like have something that centers them, and like it's gonna happen. And they may end up finding themselves on the side of something that they don't want to have be on that side, right? And then they're going to have to come and like figure out how to navigate that. So it'll be a really interesting time for brands. And I think that like, it's not just food, it's definitely wellness too. Like a lot of healthcare stuff is going to become extremely political. Obviously. All right. On a lighter note, David. So David is a little bit like me in that he spends half his time in the UK and half of his time in the States, which like I'm living full time in Italy, right? But like I'm back in the States like all the time. So I'm basically like half there all the time. And what I love about what David writes about, and generally, is that he is writing about sports, but he's not like such an American lens all the time. Like there is like some of that. For me, like growing up in the UK, like there's obviously like a lot more football or soccer, and there is more of that. And I think that's working for him because, quite honestly, like the soccer, you think basketball and you obviously think fashion, and that's happening too, and he's following that. But like soccer is like really up there in the UK, especially in terms of like how all that's going down. And he really writes a lot about the fusion of fashion and football, and he's kind of bringing that up again as like that's where he really thinks that's going to be a bigger space. And I think that is already happening in basketball, and I think that like this interweaving of like culture, like I think you're going to start seeing proper stores inside of stadiums that are like cool and interesting. There was a brand that recently released over the holidays, can't remember the name because you know this spiel now, but it's like two women. One of them, I think it's the co-founder of Skims, like, so not Kim Kardashian, but the like person who's really running her business. And this other woman who is in sports, and it's like sports fashion for women, which I've also talked about in the newsletter, is like, that is like a empty space that people have been like, where is this stuff? So they're coming out with that. And I think we're just going to start seeing more of that, more and more and more.
Totally. And I think especially as women's sports, I mean, the year 2024, like how much we all finally fucking woke up to how impactful women's sports is, and the players and the money and all the things. Okay, it's there now, that obviously this would be, an area that's even more important because, I think women traditionally or typically, are fashion's a bigger part of it. So.
Yeah, and I think that it's not even just women playing sports. I think there's an awareness that women are also watching sports, which has been like, like feels like a revelation to people. And it's like, you've never met my mother, but like I've lived with one of these for a long time. So I know this woman.
Yes.
And she has quite a lot of sportswear, let me tell you. There's still definitely space in the women's golf game for fashion. Let me just tell you that. So free nugget there, which actually I think David mentions later on in the thing. So, he and I are aligned. But
Yes.
yeah, I just think it's a big space, and I do think like also the Olympics coming to LA, that's going to accelerate. Like I think where you're going to really see it ramp up is so this not this February, so not like a month from now, but a year from now is the Winter Olympics, and it's going to be in my backyard. So it's going to be in the Italian Alps. If you can't think of any reason why sports and fashion are going to get together and have a baby, then that would be the reason. Like Italians on ski slopes, like all the brands coming to like watch the Winter Olympics is going to be a really big fashion moment. So I think we're going to
Oh,
see a lot of luxury brands lean deep into winter sports, like in a heavy way of the next like I don't know, I'm getting ready. So making
I love
product
that.
now, essentially.
Yeah, for sure. Excited to see the collaborations happen. I mean, this is like maybe bigger than Fashion Week.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really big one. Like, I think Winter Olympics previously has kind of been like more for like the snowboarding bros, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
in the Americans' mind anyway. And I think that the interesting thing here is like that doesn't exist in this culture at all. There's very few snowboarders in European ski slopes. There obviously are some, but it's not like it's more like chalets and like wine and like also skiing and eating well and like all of that. The Italian ski slopes up here, like they're on the border with Austria. So it's like it's more kind of an Austrian vibe, and it feels like where I took you over the summer. It's just a very different. But I think it'll be really like I think the pop-ups are going to be incredible. If you need to plan a pop-up, I am here for you. Okay, on to Fred Hart's
Yes.
predictions. Fred is like a CPG, like, like you know, wizard, like very embedded, like really like knows this industry, like goes to all of the trade show conferences, like really like if it's like you need to know somebody who has like been in the weeds here, like this guy. Really nice guy, just ran his first marathon in Hawaii, like yeah, all
Amazing.
good things.
Love
Love it.
that.
So his prediction is that brands will start misbehaving more, which obviously I know resonates with you.
I am
Um,
so here for that. Yes,
yes.
indeed.
Yeah. So he had like Liquid Death, Dude Wipes. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Dude
Mm-hmm.
Wipes float for that like Chicago Thanksgiving Day parade was like amazing. Nutter Butter, obviously, Slim Jim. So like all of these big things, like and just brands having like much more fun, which like I think that we've been talking about a lot. Like I think it's misbehaving, and I think there's also fun, and I think there's a spectrum
Mm-hmm.
there for me. Like I think for some brands, I think we're going to see more of the Liquid Death type brands who are just saying like screw like being like safe, and screw being like for like you know this like very typical Gen Z vibe and like doing their own thing, like more rock and roll. Like I saw
Mm-hmm.
recently today, I read that Ice Spice is like really into Ed Hardy. So I'm thinking that vibe is coming back, you know, like that kind of feel.
Yeah.
But I
Fond
also think
Dutchess,
it's
yeah, they're
like
trying to make a comeback.
yeah, but I think it needs to be a modern version of that. But like those
Mm-hmm.
brands, like at the time, were like really iconic, bold. Like we are doing our own thing off here, and people resonated with it, right? Like, and I
Yeah.
think that like I do think that there's going to be kind of this less. I think for a while, and you know, it's like we had Millennial Pink, then we had like you know then we had a blanding moment, then we
Mm-hmm.
had like everything is like really loud and like these really like you know like some kind of brands, and I think we're going to see in 2025 that there's less appetite for like this homogenous movement towards like new brand.
Totally. Totally. And I think, we're seeing like the more is more, certainly from a fashion perspective, and have that coming in. And I think brands, if they're the right personality, to really add on to that and make it differentiated and make it fun, make it, something that's like a little bit maybe more ornate.
Yeah, but I think it's like it's it's also variety. I think it's more and more, but also
Yeah,
just like, and I think this is like where, like, I think there will be more brands misbehaving. I think there'll be more brands being puritanical, as I said. Like, I think there's going to be all of the spectrum of these brands. And I think that we're going to enjoy a period where, like, not every brand looks like every new brand that you see is not an iteration of the other brand that you just saw, which would
right.
be delightful.
Yes, I welcome that era. Yes, please.
Yes, yes, yes. All right. Fred, not Fred, sorry, that was the last one.
Spencer?
Spencer. So Spencer is a co-founder of Remsen, which is obviously like one of my favorite silver brands. They make like very, very beautiful like grab bars and beautiful things for your house that if you're like aging and you need these things, but you don't want them to look like shit, like that's where you go buy those things. So I wanted to hear kind of what his thought was, and his take was that things are going to come with like a more analog pared down tech. I mean, number one Christmas gift, according to Casey Lewis this Christmas, was a digital camera, but like the old school digital cameras,
Right.
like with the SD card, like the vintage ones.
Right.
That aren't really, they're not vintage cameras for your era, but they're vintage cameras for these kids' era.
Which, is in keeping with what my kids got. I mean, they had this rad, deposit disposable camera. And they were like,
recyclable disposable camera, though, just so you know. So it gets sent back to this company. It's called photo with an F, both times. And you send it back and they recycle it. And so they send out the camera again to the next people. So like, it's like not disposable and like getting trashed.
Right. Great clarification. But such a rad gift. And they were both like, wow, this is so cool. And then watching my daughter take the pictures and then like learn to, forward it. And then like, how many do I keep forwarding? How do I, like, it's like the opposite mentality of what they have. Right. It was amazing. But yes, so I'm here for that and seeing that happen for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I could see the mixtape making a comeback. Like, everybody loved that era.
So good. Make me a mixtape. I'm yours.
Yeah. Seriously. My daughter bought a CD. She's 4, but we went to a harp concert, and our car is so like it's not that it's old enough that it still has a CD player in it. But of course we don't have any CDs because like who has CDs anymore? And so we have a harp CD, and it is like her favorite thing. So maybe that's also a prediction of this. But I do think like I've written about this before, but I think that like as AI becomes more ubiquitous and more standardized, and you have all of this tech kind of literally running your life, you are going to crave tactile human things more, inevitably, because you're just going to want to have control over things, and you're going to want to connect with people and talk to people. Like we were talking about your breakfast club and how like much like what a space that's filling for people where they don't really have that.
Totally.
And I think that will become more of a thing. So I think we're going to see more social clubs where people are actually socializing. So like Soho House, but you can talk to people. I think we're going to see more analog technology. I mean, one of the other best-selling gifts of Christmas was an alarm clock, like a literal alarm clock. So like, I think that's kind of giving you a sense of like, people are trying to find ways. Like, I think a lot of people think of their Kindle as actually kind of more analog technology, where it's like, you can spend time like disconnecting and still like be doing something. Like, you don't have to be scrolling online and like doing all that stuff. Yep. So I do think that that's going to come out in a bigger way. All right. And then to the opposite, or maybe not opposite side of this, is Sarah Shapiro's prediction. So Sarah used to write for Retail Diary. Retail Diary was acquired by Puck. So now she writes for Puck Line Sheet. Sarah is like a retail insider, like knows this business like from the bones down. And I think retail is one of those businesses that it is a hard business. You do kind of have to know how it works. To do well in it. And she really knows how it works. So I always love, and she always finds like cool stuff, but she also writes about big brands. Like, she's a great person to follow. she talks about obviously the impending TikTok ban that may or may not happen. I personally am in team it's not going to happen. I read recently that the guy from Shark Tank is going to buy it. Who knows what's going to happen? I think it'll either get, I don't know if it'll get bought, but I think that Trump will come in and like do something with that and like try to change that. It will be an interesting time. Obviously, the timing of it too, like right around like kind of that time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it'll be down for a week. The thing is that TikTok like is big everywhere. They don't need to function in the US. Their business is not going to implode. It's like whether our culture will implode is the question.
Right.
And our businesses will implode. It's not TikTok who's going to implode. It's all the businesses running their businesses on TikTok that might implode.
Right. And
I think
there's not a lot of commerce there now.
Yeah, I mean, I still think they're really figuring out TikTok Shop. Like, it's doing something for sure for brands, but I don't think like a lot of brands feel great about what it's doing for their brand, other than the ones who've like really grown up there. But I do think like I'm already seeing creators kind of like talking, and maybe it'll be a dispersal again. But I personally don't think it's going anywhere. But it will be. It's certainly going to do something. And then I think the tariffs, which she sort of kind of mentions in here, but not specifically, that I think will be a big thing. So like putting 20% tariffs on goods coming in from Canada. Canada is like in a whole like state of like woohoo about it. Like I think it'll be interesting because I think a lot of costs of goods will come up. You know, it'll be an interesting time for brands in terms of that stuff too. But yeah, I don't know. I think overall, like in this general space, like I think there's going to be a lot of like, disruptive things happening that brands will have to deal with. But I think that it will be more of a boom time this year. I think everyone's ready to shed our faux session vibes and move on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested to see what happens in the social space with TikTok and new non-regulations at Meta and all the things. So,
oh yeah,
see what's going on there.
That is quite the something. Some real marketing speak going on with that press release.
Yeah, for sure. But one of the kind of, lights that I saw in that is someone posted this morning as far as like this kind of creating a lot of smaller communities. And it makes me think of Breakfast Club, but obviously more in a virtual way, like a lot of smaller communities or socials that really are speaking to kind of more of that community and what we're all really looking for in social, but maybe aren't finding in these bigger players. Maybe it will incentivize kind of a whole new breed of things that we haven't seen yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to see a lot of AI content on the socials over the next year, which I actually don't think will resonate. So I think it'll be brands that can cut through that noise. I think will do very well. That'll be interesting. But anyway, I know things are developing in LA. Heart goes out to you guys. So
yeah,
hope it gets better.
Stay safe.
Yeah.
Stay safe.
All right. Bye.
Bye.